Alright guys, we're back with the final act review of Sonic X Shadow Generations. Let's go. And before we start this, I'm going to say something, so here's a timestamp to skip to. But this is basically addressing the things that I didn't address last review, because I didn't finish the game at that point. Alright, let's go. Alright, let's get into the bosses that I didn't cover last time. Let's start with Metal Overlord. So we start the Metal Overlord boss fight, on the water, since at this point in the story, we get Doom Ray. Which is actually pretty creative, because each new ability you get seems to be the main focus of the boss fight, or the main ability. We'll get into that later. Anyways, it seems that Metal Overlord is still up to his, or is still acting the same as he once was. Which just tells us that we're in the point of time where he was, still alive. We're not reviving him. Although in my opinion, this boss fight is a bit lackluster compared to all the other ones. Metal Overlord doesn't have as much significance to Shadow as, the Bio Lizard or Mephiles later down the line, but still, it's a pretty solid boss fight. Metal Overlord is a pretty cool boss, and we haven't seen him since Heroes, really, and it's, glad to see him back. He's got the giant factor, he's got the edge factor, and he's pretty scary. Anyways, now on to my favorite boss, Mephiles. I love how they clarify some things about 06, because Shadow doesn't seem to remember anything about 06. Heck, I don't even remember anything. But Mephiles remembers every single moment. And it seems like Mephiles is frozen in a state of life and death. And when Shadow appears, it's his chance to bring himself back to the timeline. Since after 06, it meant that Mephiles was erased from the timeline and he didn't exist. But now if he beats Shadow, he can now prove that he is worthy. And that shows a lot within the dialogue. Anyways, enough with the lore dump. I just love the boss. It uses Doom Squid, which adds on to each new ability that's the focus of the boss fight. But I love how crazy and convoluted this boss fight is, because it shows that Mephiles is just pulling out all the stops to bring himself back. He is not letting this moment go to waste. He wants to exist. And unlike in 06, Mephiles is not an all-knowing mastermind. He is pathetic, really, and is willing to do anything. And Shadow doesn't seem to see the big deal about him. And with all of Shadow's growth, he no longer sees the manipulative threat that Mephiles used to be. He is now stronger. And when one more attack is left with Mephiles, he utters the most hard line ever.
There is no future for you. Ever.
Alright, before we get to the final boss, I just want to talk about the best moments. Right before Shadow's about to be corrupted by Doom with evil, Maria brings him back down to Earth. Maria shows Shadow what he was meant to be, and she reveals the emotional truth to Shadow's name. Just watch.
There's only darkness, but a shadow will show you where to find the light. Do you understand?
And Shadow is stopped from being corrupted by Doom. Man, this is why Shadow's emo all the time. Also, I'd love to highlight this moment where Shadow finds me. Connects everything together, I've always wondered what he was doing. Anyway, it basically shows that, yes, this does take place during Generations. Clears up any confusion. Anyways, this just shows the sheer rivalry that Shadow and I have with each other. And it also shows that, Shadow has some form of respect for me. And we basically get a cutscene version of the Shadow boss in Generations. And I would have never known that Shadow had switched out the real Chaos Emerald for the fake Chaos Emerald when I beat him. Man, little cheater. Anyways, we get this great moment. Now on to my review of the final boss, Black Doom. It's a really good boss. This is basically a closure to all of Black Doom. We may never see him again after this. And I'd rather end with a big, great finale than anything else. Anyways, at this point in the story, we get Doom Wing, which is one of the greatest moves in this game because you can basically skip half of the level But since there's no super, since, you know, I'm using the emeralds at this point, this is basically our final level for this whole thing. But I just really like these sinking buildings, psychedelic levels, and yeah, it's pretty cool. But for me, it was kind of hard, and I'm not just saying that because I got a D rank. But yeah, it's cool. It's a long boss though, and yeah, I don't really have much to say about this one. It was a nice boss that ended the game, and he was really edgy and really cool, and that's all I like about it, or that's the best I like about it. Alright, but before we end the final act review, I just want to show you guys this one moment. If it weren't for this game, I would have never known Shadow did this.
Us apart. I will always be in your heart.
Maria. Wait.
The only time Shadow cries. Okay, 11 out of 10. My thoughts still stand.